There was once a small village hidden between green hills and endless fields. It was the kind of place where mornings arrived quietly. Before the sun appeared, farmers were already walking toward their fields. Birds moved between the branches of ancient trees. Thin columns of smoke rose from small clay houses as families prepared their breakfast. The village had no tall buildings, no expensive cars, no shining stores, no famous schools, and almost everyone who lived there had accepted the same simple truth. Life would probably never change. But one boy refused to believe that. His name was Arin. Arin was 19 years old, thin, quiet, and usually covered in dust from working around the village. He lived with his mother in a small house at the far end of the village, beside an enormous old tree. The house had only 2 rooms. During heavy rain, water sometimes came through the roof. During winter, cold air entered through cracks in the wooden walls. They owned very little. But Arin had something that most people around him had lost long ago. He had a dream. Every evening, after finishing his work, Arin climbed the hill behind the village. From the top, he could see everything: the fields, the river, the tiny houses, the narrow road disappearing toward the distant city. And beyond all of that, he imagined another life. A life where his mother didn't have to worry about money. A life where she could sleep without wondering whether there would be enough food tomorrow. A life where their old house could finally have a strong roof. A life where Arin could build something meaningful with his own hands. He didn't know exactly what that thing would be. He only knew that he wanted more. Not more money for himself. Not a luxurious life. He wanted freedom. He wanted his mother to smile without fear. One evening, while sitting beneath the old tree, Arin said quietly, "One day, I'm going to change our lives." His mother heard him from the dew. Dreams are beautiful when you first imagine them. She looked toward the darkening sky. But chasing them is where life becomes difficult. Arin smiled. "I don't mind difficult." His mother laughed softly. "You say that now." Neither of them knew how much those words would matter later. That night, Arin lay awake listening to the wind. He stared through the small window. The moon was bright. The village was silent. And somewhere beyond those mountains was the city where he believed his future was waiting. He closed his eyes. "I will go there someday." He didn't know how. He didn't know when. He didn't know what would happen. But for the first time in his life, he made a promise to himself. He would try. And sometimes, that is where every great journey begins. Not with money. Not with connections. Not with certainty. Just with one person quietly deciding, "I will try." Arin's mother, Mira, had spent most of her life in that little house. She had raised Arin there after his father died when Arin was only 6. There were no photographs of expensive vacations hanging on the walls. No furniture worth much money. No decorations. Only a few wooden chairs, an old table, a clay stove, and a small shelf filled with books that belonged to Arin's father. Those books were the most valuable things in the house. Arin had read almost every one. His father had been a teacher. He wasn't wealthy, but he loved learning. Before his death, he used to tell Arin, "Knowledge is the one thing nobody can take from you." Arin had remembered those words. Whenever he felt poor, he opened one of his father's books. Whenever he felt stupid, he studied. Whenever someone told him that people like him couldn't succeed, he read another page. And slowly, something strange happened. He began to understand that poverty was not only about having little money. Sometimes poverty was also about having little hope. And hope could be rebuilt. One afternoon, Arin returned from working in the fields. His hands were dirty. His shirt was soaked with sweat. He entered the house and found his mother sitting beside the stove. She was counting coins. Arin stopped. He knew what that meant. "How much is left?" Mira quickly closed her hand. "Nothing to worry about." "Mother." She looked away. Arin walked over. "How much?" She slowly opened her hand. There were only a few coins. Arin stared at them. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "I'll find more work." "You already work too much." "I can work at night." "No." "Why not?" "Because you're my son, not a machine." Arin smiled sadly. "I don't want you to worry anymore." Mira looked at him. "You think money will solve everything?" "No." "Then what will?" Arin thought for a moment. Choice. She didn't understand. He continued. If we have enough money, you can choose whether you work. You can choose where we live. You can choose what medicine you buy. You can choose what happens tomorrow. Mira stared at him. You've been thinking about this for a long time. Yes. And you think the city will give you all that? I don't know. Then why go? Arin looked toward the window. Because staying here guarantees nothing will change. His mother became silent. That sentence frightened her. Because she knew he was right. Sometimes the hardest decision isn't choosing between two good paths. Sometimes it is choosing between a painful journey and a comfortable life that will never change. That evening, Mira prepared their usual dinner. Rice, vegetables, a little salt. Nothing special. But they ate together. And while they ate, Arin finally said what he had been afraid to say. Mother, I want to go to the city. Her spoon stopped. For how long? I don't know. When? Soon. Mira looked down. You'll come back. It wasn't a question. It was a mother's hope disguised as a sentence. Arin nodded. I'll come back. Promise. I promise. She smiled. But after Arin went to sleep, Mira sat alone beside the window. She knew something her son didn't. The city didn't care about dreams. The world didn't reward people simply because they worked hard. And dreams had a price. Sometimes the price was failure. Sometimes loneliness. Sometimes years of uncertainty. Still, she knew she couldn't hold him back forever. So she whispered into the darkness. Go find your life, my son. 3 weeks later, Arin prepared to leave. He owned almost nothing. 2 shirts, 1 pair of trousers, a small blanket, his father's old books, and a worn leather bag. Mira packed food for the journey. She wrapped bread and dried fruit in a cloth. Then she placed a small amount of money inside his bag. Arin found it. Mother, I can't take this. You can. It's too much. It's not much. It's almost everything we have. Mira looked at him. Exactly. Arin tried to give it back. She pushed his hand away. Take it. But, Arin. He stopped. Your father once told me something. What? He said there are moments in life when you must choose whether to protect someone from difficulty or allow them to become strong enough to survive it. She looked directly into his eyes. I don't want to protect you from your future. Arin lowered his head. I'm scared. It was the first time he had admitted it. Mira smiled. Good. Good. Fear means you understand that this matters. She stepped closer. Just don't let fear make your decisions for you. Arin nodded. Mira continued. There will be days when people laugh at you. There will be days when you fail. There will be days when you feel completely alone. She touched his face. And one day, you may even believe that your dream was foolish. Arin's eyes became wet. What should I do then? His mother answered quietly. Remember why you started. Those words stayed inside him. Before leaving, Arin walked beneath the old tree. He touched its rough bark. He had spent countless evenings there. He had cried there, dreamed there, read his father's books there, and promised himself that someday he would return successful. He looked back at the house. His mother stood in the doorway. Arin lifted his hand. She waved. Then he turned toward the road. 1 step, then another. He didn't look back again. Because sometimes, if you keep looking behind you, you become afraid to move forward. The road to the city was long. Arin walked for hours before reaching the main road. Eventually, he found a crowded bus heading toward the city. He climbed aboard. There were no empty seats. So he stood near the back. As the bus moved away from the village, Arin watched through the dusty window. The fields became smaller. The houses disappeared. The hills faded behind him. For the first time, he realized something. He had left everything familiar. The village had been poor, but it had been safe. The city would not be. He pulled his father's old notebook from his bag. On the first page was a sentence his father had written years ago. A man's future is not determined by where he begins, but by the direction in which he walks. Arin read it again and again. Then he closed the notebook. Outside the window, the city finally appeared. Buildings rose into the sky. Cars filled the roads. People moved quickly. Signs covered the streets. Everything looked enormous. Arin stepped off the bus. For several seconds, he simply stood there. Nobody noticed him. Nobody cared that he had arrived. People walked past him carrying their own problems. A businessman argued on the phone. A woman hurried toward a train. A delivery worker pushed a cart. A child held his father's hand. The city continued moving. Arin suddenly understood something important. The world does not stop to make room for your dream. If you want a place in it, you have to create one. He tightened his grip on his bag. Then he started walking. He didn't know where he would sleep. He didn't know where he would work. He didn't know anyone. But he knew one thing. He had come to change his life. And he was not going home yet. For the first 2 days, Arin searched for work. He visited restaurants, construction sites, small shops, workshops, factories. Everywhere he heard the same questions. What experience do you have? Who recommended you? Where are you from? How much education do you have? Arin answered honestly, and one by one, the doors closed. On the 3rd day, a restaurant owner finally offered him a job. It wasn't the job Arin wanted. He had imagined working in an office, perhaps learning business, perhaps building something of his own. Instead, he was given a broom. Clean the kitchen, the owner said. Arin looked at the broom, then at the kitchen, then back at the owner. How much does it pay? The owner told him. It was barely enough for food. But Arin smiled. When do I start? Now. Arin grabbed the broom, and he began. For the next several weeks, he woke before sunrise. He cleaned tables, washed dishes, carried boxes, swept floors, delivered food. At night, when everyone went home, Arin remained behind. He studied. He read. He watched how the restaurant operated, how customers behaved, how the owner calculated costs, how suppliers negotiated prices, how employees worked, how small mistakes could lose money. He wasn't simply working. He was learning. One night, the restaurant owner saw him reading after closing. What are you doing? Studying. For what? Business. The owner laughed. You? Arin looked up. Yes. You clean floors. I know. Then why study business? Arin closed the book. Because cleaning floors is what I do today. He paused. But it doesn't have to be what I do forever. The owner stared at him. Then he laughed again. Dream big, kid. Arin smiled. I plan to. Months passed. Arin became stronger. He saved every coin he could. He refused unnecessary expenses. He continued studying. He also began helping the restaurant owner with small tasks. Keeping records, calculating daily sales, talking to suppliers, creating simple advertisements. Slowly, the restaurant started making more money. One evening, Arin suggested a new idea. The owner rejected it immediately. That's ridiculous. Arin explained again. It could bring younger customers. We don't need it. But I said no. Arin nodded. He returned to work. Later that night, another worker laughed. You really think you're going to become a businessman? Arin didn't answer. The worker continued. People like us don't become rich. Someone else laughed. He's still dreaming about his big future. Arin heard everything. He wanted to defend himself. He wanted to tell them they were wrong. But he remembered something his mother had said. You don't need to prove your dream to everyone. So he stayed quiet. That night, he walked alone through the city. Rain began falling. He had no umbrella. His shoes became soaked. He looked at the towering buildings around him. Millions of lights shone through the darkness. He wondered how many people inside those buildings had once been told they weren't good enough. Maybe success wasn't about never being doubted. Maybe it was about continuing even when you were. Arin looked at the rain falling onto the pavement. Then he smiled. Let them laugh. He kept walking. 1 year after leaving his village, Arin received a letter. His mother had written only a few lines. She told him she was proud. She told him not to worry. And she told him the old tree was still standing. Arin read the letter several times. Then he looked at the small room he rented. It wasn't much. A narrow bed, a wooden desk, one window, a stack of books. But it was his. He placed the letter beside his father's notebook. Then he sat down. For the first time, he allowed himself to think honestly. He had worked for a year. He had saved some money. He had learned many things. But he was nowhere near his dream. He was still poor, still unknown, still uncertain. Maybe his mother was right. Maybe dreams were beautiful at the beginning because you didn't yet understand how difficult they were. Arin leaned back. His eyes became heavy. He almost decided to quit. Almost. Then he remembered the old tree. He remembered his mother's face. He remembered the promise. And something inside him changed. He realized that the first year had never been about success. It had been about becoming the person who could eventually handle success. He opened his father's notebook. On a blank page, he wrote, "1 year is not failure." Then, 1 year is only the beginning. He closed the notebook. Outside, the city was still awake. Cars moved through the streets. People chased their own dreams. Some were winning. Some were losing. Some were giving up. Arin stood beside the window. He looked toward the distant lights. Tomorrow, he would wake before sunrise. Tomorrow, he would work again. Tomorrow, he would learn again. Tomorrow, he would take another step. He didn't know where those steps would eventually lead. But he finally understood something. A dream doesn't become real because you believe in it once. A dream becomes real when you believe in it again and again and again, especially on the days when believing feels impossible. Arin smiled. Then he turned off the light. And in the darkness of that tiny room, the boy who had once been afraid of the future finally made another promise. He would not give up. Not tomorrow. Not next month. Not because someone laughed. Not because he failed. Not because the road became difficult. He would keep walking. Because somewhere beyond the fear, beyond the rejection, beyond the failures, there was a life waiting for him. And he had only just begun. The city looked beautiful from a distance. But Arin soon discovered that beauty and kindness were not the same thing. Every morning, millions of people woke up and rushed into the streets. Everyone seemed to have somewhere to go. Everyone seemed to be chasing something. Money, success, security, recognition. And yet, almost nobody had time to notice anyone else. Arin had been in the city for more than a year. He had learned how to survive. He knew which streets were cheaper, which restaurants offered leftover food, which bus routes could save him money, which shops sometimes needed temporary workers. He had learned many things, but he had not yet learned how to succeed. His job at the restaurant barely paid enough for rent and food. Still, he remained grateful. At least he had work. At least he wasn't sleeping on the street. At least he had a place to return to every night. But deep inside, he knew he couldn't stay there forever. One evening, after closing the restaurant, Arin sat outside on the steps. The city lights stretched endlessly before him. He watched expensive cars pass by. Inside some of those cars sat people who had probably earned more money that month than Arin could earn in years. For a moment, jealousy entered his mind. Then he shook his head. He didn't want their lives. He wanted to build his own. He took out his notebook. At the top of the page, he wrote, "What can I do that people will pay me for?" He stared at the question. He had no answer. So he wrote another. "What am I good at?" Nothing came immediately. He could work hard. He could learn. He could endure. But none of those things seemed valuable enough. Arin closed the notebook. Maybe he had misunderstood success. Maybe working hard wasn't enough. Maybe dreaming wasn't enough. Maybe he needed to discover something else. Something nobody had taught him. Something that would force him to become a different person. The next morning, he began searching. Not for another job. For an opportunity. Arin discovered a small company that repaired and sold agricultural equipment. The company was looking for an assistant. It wasn't a prestigious position, but Arin saw potential. The company worked with farmers. It solved real problems. And Arin understood farmers. He knew their struggles. He knew how difficult it was to maintain old equipment. He knew how much time was lost when machines stopped working. He applied. The manager looked at his application, then looked at Arin. "You don't have experience. I can learn. We need someone who already knows the work. I can learn quickly." The manager shook his head. No. Arin stood there. He wanted to argue. Instead, he simply nodded. "Thank you for your time." He left. Outside the building, he stood on the sidewalk. That was his first serious rejection. It wouldn't be his last. He applied somewhere else. Rejected. Another company. Rejected. A warehouse. Rejected. A small office. Rejected. A repair shop. Rejected. After 10 applications, he stopped counting. On the 11th day, something strange happened. He wasn't angry anymore. He was tired. There was a difference. Anger makes you want to fight. Tiredness makes you want to sit down. Arin sat on a bench. People passed him. Nobody noticed. He looked at his hands. They were rough from work. He wondered how many years it would take before someone finally saw potential in him. Then a thought entered his mind. What if nobody ever does? The thought frightened him. But instead of running from it, Arin faced it. What if nobody believes in me? He whispered. Then I have to believe in myself. He stood up and walked to the next building. The restaurant eventually reduced Arin's working hours. Business had slowed. The owner apologized. I can't afford to pay everyone. Arin understood. He didn't complain. But the reduced income created a new problem. His rent was due. He had savings. Not much, but enough for a few weeks. He moved into a cheaper room on the edge of the city. The room was barely a room. It was an old storage space converted into a place to sleep. The ceiling leaked whenever it rained. There was one small window. The walls were cracked. At night, he could hear rats moving somewhere behind them. The first night, rain began falling. Water dripped through the ceiling. Drop, drop, drop. Arin moved his blanket. Another drop landed on the floor. He moved again. Soon, half the room was wet. Arin sat against the wall and laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes laughing is easier than crying. He remembered his mother's house. Their old roof had leaked too. But somehow, that house had always felt warm. This room felt empty. Arin took out his father's notebook. He opened to a blank page. He wrote, "Today was terrible." Then he stopped. After a moment, he added, "But tomorrow hasn't happened yet." He closed the notebook. That night, Arin slept badly, but he woke before sunrise. His clothes were damp. His back hurt. His eyes were tired. Still, he stood up. He looked at himself in the cracked mirror. "You are still here," he whispered. "And that's enough for today." Then he went outside. A week later, Arin found temporary work at a construction site. The work was brutal. He carried bricks, moved cement, cleaned debris, loaded materials. His hands became covered in cuts. His back hurt constantly, but the pay was better. The supervisor was a rough man named Darren. He rarely praised anyone. One morning, Darren shouted, "Move faster." Arin lifted another load. "You think this is a vacation?" "No." "Then move." Arin kept working. At lunch, another worker asked, "Why do you work like that?" "Like what?" "Like you're trying to escape something." Arin smiled. "Maybe I am." The worker laughed. "Escape what?" "My old life." The man shook his head. "You can't run from where you came from." Arin looked at him. "I'm not running from it." He looked toward the unfinished building. "I'm running toward something." The man didn't answer. Weeks passed. Arin became one of the hardest workers on the site. Darren noticed. One afternoon, Darren handed him a set of measurements. "Can you calculate this?" Arin studied the numbers. He had learned basic mathematics from his father's books. He calculated quickly. Darren checked his work. It was correct. "You studied?" "Yes." "What did you study?" "Whatever I could." Darren stared at him. Then he handed him another sheet. "Do this one." Arin did. "Correct again." Darren nodded. "You might be useful for more than carrying bricks." It was a small sentence, but to Arin, it felt enormous. For the first time in months, someone had noticed something beyond his poverty. Someone had seen ability. Arin went home that evening with a different feeling. Maybe he wasn't empty-handed after all. Maybe he had been collecting skills without realizing their value. Arin began looking for opportunities again. This time, he didn't only search for jobs. He searched for problems. He noticed that small construction companies struggled with organizing materials. He noticed restaurants wasted food. He noticed farmers had difficulty finding reliable repair services. He noticed workers didn't know where to find temporary jobs. Everywhere he looked, he saw problems. And slowly, he began asking himself, could I solve one of them? He started experimenting. His first idea was a simple service connecting temporary workers with small businesses. He created a handwritten list. He visited restaurants, workshops, construction sites, small stores. He asked employers what kind of workers they needed. Then he asked unemployed workers what kind of work they could do. For several days, it seemed promising. Then everything collapsed. Nobody trusted him. Workers thought he was trying to steal their information. Business owners didn't want to deal with someone inexperienced. One person laughed in his face. Another told him to leave. Someone tore his paper in half. By the end of the week, Arin had failed 10 times. 10. He returned to his room and placed the ruined papers on the floor. He stared at them. His dreams suddenly felt childish. He imagined going back home. Maybe he could work in the fields. Maybe he could live quietly. Maybe there was nothing wrong with accepting a simple life. He sat there for a long time. Then he noticed something. The papers weren't empty. They contained information. Every rejection had taught him something. One business owner had said, "Your system is too complicated." Another had said, "I don't trust people I don't know." Another had said, "Why should I use this instead of asking people I already know?" Arin picked up his notebook. He wrote every criticism down. For the first time, he didn't treat rejection as an insult. He treated it as information. That night, he wrote one sentence. Failure is expensive only when you learn nothing from it. Months later, Arin received another letter from home. His mother had become sick. The letter was short. She didn't want him to worry. She told him she was resting. But Arin could read between the lines. She needed him. He immediately bought a ticket home. During the journey, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the promises he had made. He had told her he would return successful. But what if he returned with nothing? What would he say? When he finally reached the village, the familiar hills appeared. The old tree stood beside the house. But everything looked smaller than he remembered. His mother was lying on a bed. She smiled when she saw him. "You came." Arin sat beside her. "Of course. You look thinner. You look tired." She laughed softly. "Maybe we both need better food." Arin held her hand. "I should have stayed." "No. I should have sent more money." "No. I should have." "Stop." Mira looked at him. "Don't turn love into guilt." Arin became silent. She continued. "You left because you wanted to build a better life. I failed. You haven't failed. I haven't succeeded either." She smiled. "Those aren't the only two choices." Arin looked at her. "Then what is the third?" She touched his hand. "Learning." Those words stayed with him. But when he returned to the city, something inside him was different. He no longer felt like a young man chasing a dream. He felt like a son who had a responsibility. And responsibility can make dreams heavier. The hardest night came during winter. Arin had lost his temporary construction job. His small business idea had failed. His savings were almost gone. His mother was still recovering. He had applied for dozens of positions. Nothing worked. That evening, he walked through the city without knowing where he was going. The streets were crowded, but he felt completely alone. He stopped beside a bridge. Below him, the river reflected the city lights. Arin leaned against the railing. For the first time since leaving home, he allowed himself to say the words aloud. "Maybe I can't do this." The sentence felt heavy. He repeated it. "Maybe I can't." He thought about his mother, his father's notebook, the old tree, the promise, everything. Then another thought came. Maybe giving up would be easier. And it would have been. There was no shame in returning home. No one would blame him. He could work in the fields, live near his mother, sleep under the familiar roof, eat familiar food. Maybe peace was better than ambition. Arin stood there for a long time. Then he remembered something his father had written years earlier. He opened the notebook. The page was worn. The sentence was simple. "When you cannot see the whole road, take the next step." Arin read it, then closed his eyes. He didn't suddenly become confident. He didn't suddenly know what to do. Nothing magical happened. But he realized something. He had been asking the wrong question. He had been asking, "Will I succeed?" He couldn't answer that. Nobody could. So he asked a smaller question. "Can I take one more step?" The answer was yes. One more step. That was all. Arin left the bridge. He walked through the cold streets. The city still didn't care. His problems were still there. His money was still running out. His future was still uncertain. But something had changed. He had survived the night when he almost gave up. And sometimes surviving your darkest moment is itself a victory. The next morning, Arin woke before sunrise. He washed his face, opened his notebook, and wrote, "I don't need to know how the story ends." Then he wrote, "I only need to continue writing it." He closed the notebook. Outside, The first light appeared over the city, and Arin stood up. He was still poor, still unknown, still afraid, but he was moving again, and he had no idea that the next person he would meet would change the direction of his entire life. For the first time in months, he didn't feel desperate. He still had problems. His money was almost gone. His job was uncertain. His mother's health worried him. His dreams seemed farther away than ever. But something inside him had become calm. He had stopped demanding immediate answers from life. Instead, he decided to focus on the next step. That morning, he walked through an old neighborhood on the eastern side of the city. He had heard that several small workshops there were looking for temporary workers. The streets were narrow. Old buildings leaned against one another. Small stores opened their shutters as the sun rose. As Arin passed a tiny repair shop, he noticed an elderly man sitting outside. The man was repairing an old mechanical clock. He had white hair, a long gray beard, and remarkably calm eyes. Arin stopped. "You repair clocks?" The old man looked up. "Sometimes." "Does it work?" The old man smiled. "Everything works." Arin looked at the broken clock. "That doesn't look like it's working." "Not yet." Arin smiled. The old man continued repairing it. After a moment, he asked, "Why are you walking so early?" "Looking for work." "Do you usually find it?" "No." "Then why keep looking?" Arin thought about the question. "Because stopping won't help." The old man nodded. "Good answer." Arin was about to leave when the old man said, "You look tired." "I am." "Not from work." Arin stopped. The old man looked at him carefully. "You're tired from fighting yourself." Arin didn't understand. The old man pointed to the chair beside him. "Sit." Arin sat. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then the old man asked, "What do you want?" Arin answered immediately, "Success." The old man laughed. "That's not an answer." "Why?" "Because most people say they want success when they actually want what they believe success will give them." Arin thought. "Freedom. Better. Security. Better. A good life for my mother." The old man nodded. "Now we're getting somewhere." Arin looked at him. "Who are you?" "Someone who failed many times." "Did you become successful?" The old man smiled. "Eventually." Arin leaned forward. "How?" The old man placed the repaired clock on the table. "It took me 40 years to learn what I could have learned in 4. "What?" The old man looked directly into Arin's eyes. "How to keep going without destroying yourself." Those words stayed with Arin. Before he left, the old man gave him a small piece of paper. There were 3 sentences written on it. "Wake before the world wakes. Work when nobody is watching. Keep going when nobody believes in you." Arin folded the paper carefully. "Why are you giving this to me?" The old man smiled. "Because I once needed someone to give it to me." Arin returned to the old repair shop the next morning. The old man was there. "So you came back." "I have questions." "Good." Arin sat down. "How do I change my life?" The old man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pointed toward the street. "What do you see?" "People." "What else?" "Cars." "Try again." Arin watched carefully. "A man selling bread." "Good." "A woman carrying boxes." "Good." "A boy running to school." "Good." The old man nodded. "Everyone is moving." "Yes." "But most people don't know where they're going." Arin frowned. "What does that have to do with changing my life?" "Everything." The old man leaned back. "You keep saying you want a different life, but you haven't built a different daily routine." Arin became silent. The old man continued. "You wake when you're tired. You work when you must. You study when you have time. You dream when you feel inspired." He shook his head. "That's not discipline." "Then what is discipline?" "Doing what must be done whether you feel like it or not." Arin remembered all the mornings he had stayed in bed because he felt hopeless. The old man raised one finger. "First rule, control your morning." He raised another. "Second, control your attention." A third finger. "Third, control your response." Arin listened carefully. Your morning determines how you begin. Your attention determines what you become. And your response determines whether failure destroys you or teaches you. Arin looked down at the paper. "What if I fail again?" "You will." "What if I fail many times?" "You will." "What if I work hard and still don't succeed?" The old man smiled. "Then you will have learned something most people never learn." What? That effort is not a guarantee of success. Arin looked confused. Isn't that discouraging? No. The old man shook his head. It is freedom. He continued. Once you understand that hard work doesn't guarantee success, you stop demanding rewards for effort. You simply become better. Arin sat quietly. That idea changed something in him. He had always thought, if I work hard, life owes me success. Now he understood. Life owed him nothing. His job was not to demand success. His job was to become capable of creating it. The next morning, Arin set an alarm. 4:30 a.m. When it rang, he opened his eyes. His first thought was, I don't want to get up. He almost turned it off. Then he remembered the old man's words. Discipline meant doing what needed to be done. So he stood. The room was freezing. The city outside was dark. He washed his face. Then he sat at his small desk. For 1 hour, he studied. Business, communication, basic accounting, sales, marketing, problem solving. He didn't understand everything, but he kept reading. At 5:30, he went outside. He walked for 30 minutes. At 6 o'clock, he began work. The first day felt difficult. The second day felt worse. On the third day, he overslept. He woke at 6:20. For a moment, disappointment filled him. Then he remembered something else the old man had said. Discipline is not perfection. Discipline is returning. So the next morning, he started again. 4:30. Wake up. Wash. Study. Walk. Work. Repeat. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Something strange happened. Arin began changing without noticing. His mind became clearer. His body became stronger. He complained less. He became more patient. He began noticing opportunities that he previously ignored. Most importantly, he stopped waiting to feel motivated. He acted first. Motivation came later. One morning, the old man watched him arrive. You look different. Arin smiled. I wake up early now. No. The old man shook his head. That's not what changed. What changed? You stopped negotiating with yourself. Arin smiled. He understood. Every morning had once been an argument. Should I get up? Should I study? Should I work? Should I try again? Now there was no argument. There was simply action. And action was slowly rebuilding his life. Arin made a rule. 1 hour. Every day, no matter what happened, he would spend 1 hour learning. Some days he studied business. Some days mathematics. Some days communication. Some days technology. Some days he simply read biographies of people who had built something from nothing. He discovered a pattern. Almost everyone he admired had experienced periods when nothing seemed to work. They had been rejected, mocked, ignored, poor, confused. Some had lost everything. The difference wasn't that they never failed. The difference was that they kept learning. One evening, Arin found an old book about entrepreneurship. Inside was a sentence that caught his attention. You don't need to know everything. You need to know what to learn next. He wrote it down. That became one of his favorite ideas. Whenever he faced a problem, he stopped saying, I don't know how to do this. Instead, he asked, what do I need to learn? That question transformed his mind. He had always believed intelligence meant knowing answers. Now he realized intelligence could also mean knowing how to find answers. He began visiting libraries. He asked experienced workers questions. He watched people who were better than him. He studied their habits. He took notes. He practiced. And he made mistakes. Many mistakes. But every mistake became another lesson. Slowly, the boy who had arrived in the city with nothing began accumulating something more valuable than money. He was accumulating ability. One afternoon, Arin visited the old repair shop. The old man was working on another clock. Arin said, I think I understand. The old man smiled. That's dangerous. Arin laughed. I used to think I needed one huge opportunity. And now, I think I need thousands of small improvements. The old man nodded. Exactly. Arin explained his new idea. I want to improve one thing every day. What thing? Anything. The old man raised an eyebrow. Give me an example. Arin thought. Today, I'll improve my communication. And tomorrow, my financial knowledge. And the day after, my health. And after that, my ability to solve problems. The old man smiled. Small steps. Arin nodded. Small steps. The old man pointed at the enormous clock hanging above the workshop. Do you know how that clock works? Yes. Then tell me. Arin studied it. One movement at a time. Exactly. The old man tapped the clock. People admire the hour hand because it travels so far. But they don't see the tiny movements that make it possible. Arin stared at the clock. That metaphor stayed with him. He didn't need to change his entire life tomorrow. He only needed to move one small step. Then another. Then another. A year later, thousands of tiny steps would become a completely different person. Arin tried his worker connection idea again. This time, he simplified it. No complicated system. No unnecessary promises. He simply created a small notebook containing the names and skills of workers. Then he visited businesses. Do you need someone for one day? Yes. What kind of worker? Someone who can carry heavy materials. Arin checked his list. I know someone. He made a phone call. The worker got the job. Arin earned a tiny fee. It was almost nothing, but it was his first success. The next day, another business asked for help. Then another. Arin began connecting workers with small businesses. It wasn't a company yet. It wasn't impressive. Nobody would have called it success. But Arin saw something. It worked. Not perfectly. Not quickly. But it worked. Then a problem appeared. One worker didn't show up. A business owner became angry. Arin lost the client. Another worker demanded more money. Another business refused to pay on time. Another worker gave false information about his skills. Problems appeared everywhere. Old Arin would have seen those problems as proof that he wasn't capable. New Arin saw them differently. Each problem revealed something that needed improvement. He created rules. Verify workers. Confirm schedules. Write down agreements. Follow up. Keep records. Communicate clearly. His little notebook became more organized. His process became better. His confidence grew. One evening, he visited the old man. I failed again. The old man smiled. Congratulations. Arin laughed. You always say that. Because you keep bringing me failures. And you keep calling them lessons. Because that's what they are. The old man pointed at Arin's notebook. Your failures are building your system. Arin looked down. The old man continued. One day, you'll look back and realize the things that hurt you most were also the things that taught you the most. Arin nodded. For the first time, he wasn't afraid of failure. He was beginning to become curious about it. One evening, something went wrong. A business owner accused Arin of sending an unqualified worker. The worker had lied about his experience. The business lost money. The owner demanded compensation. Arin was furious. He wanted to blame the worker. And the worker deserved blame. But after the argument ended, Arin sat alone. He thought about what had happened. The worker had lied. That was true. But Arin had failed to verify the information. That was also true. He could spend the entire night blaming someone else. It wouldn't change the result. So he opened his notebook. At the top of the page, he wrote, My responsibility. Then he listed everything he could have done differently. Verify experience. Ask for references. Test skills. Confirm information. Create written agreements. The list grew longer. Arin stared at it. Then something unexpected happened. He felt stronger. Taking responsibility didn't make him weaker. It gave him control. If the problem was completely someone else's fault, there was nothing he could do. But if part of the problem belonged to him, he could fix it. That night, Arin finally understood one of the most important lessons of his life. Blame gives you an excuse. Responsibility gives you power. From that day forward, he stopped asking, Whose fault is this? He started asking, What can I do about it? That question became his weapon. When business failed, he improved the process. When someone rejected him, he improved his skills. When money disappeared, he improved his financial discipline. When fear appeared, he took action anyway. And slowly, almost invisibly, Arin became a different man. The boy who had once stood on a bridge wondering whether he should give up was disappearing. In his place was someone more patient, more disciplined, more thoughtful, more dangerous to failure. Because failure could no longer easily control him. One evening, Arin returned to the old repair shop. The door was closed. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. He looked through the window. The workshop was empty. On the table was the old clock. Beside it was a note. Arin opened it. Only one sentence was written. "You have learned enough to walk without me." Arin stared at the words. He felt something tighten in his chest. He had become so focused on learning that he hadn't realized how much the old man's guidance had changed him. He looked around the empty workshop. "Thank you," he whispered. Then he folded the note and placed it inside his father's notebook. Outside, the sun was setting. The city lights were beginning to appear. Arin stood on the sidewalk. For the first time, the enormous city didn't look like an enemy. It looked like an opportunity. Not because the city had changed. Because he had changed. He still didn't know how far he would go. He still had much to learn. He still had problems waiting for him. But now he possessed something he had never had before. Discipline, patience, responsibility, and the ability to continue. Arin looked toward the horizon. Tomorrow would be difficult. He knew that. But he was ready. Because the greatest transformation in his life had already begun. He had stopped waiting for life to save him. He had started becoming the person who could save himself. The next morning, Arin made a decision. He would give himself 100 days. Not 100 days to become rich. Not 100 days to become famous. Not even 100 days to become successful. He simply wanted to discover what would happen if he stopped making excuses for 100 days. He took a blank sheet of paper and wrote, "Day 1, begin." Underneath it, he wrote 5 promises. Wake before sunrise. Study for 1 hour. Work honestly. Save something every day. Never quit because of one bad day. He pinned the paper above his desk. Then he began. Day 1 was difficult. Day 2 was difficult. Day 7 was worse. By the second week, the excitement had disappeared. There was no inspiration. No dramatic transformation. Just repetition. Wake. Study. Work. Save. Learn. Sleep. Repeat. Some mornings, Arin wanted to stay in bed. Some evenings, he wanted to spend his money. Some days, he wondered whether any of it mattered. But the paper remained above his desk. Never quit because of one bad day. So he continued. Day 20. Day 30. Day 45. Day 60. People around him began noticing. "You've changed," one worker said. Arin smiled. "I'm trying." "No. You're different." Arin didn't know what to say. He hadn't become a different person overnight. He had simply kept small promises to himself for many days. And those promises had begun changing his identity. By day 100, Arin stood in front of the same cracked mirror where he had once questioned his future. He looked at himself. He wasn't rich. He wasn't successful. His clothes were still simple. His room was still small. But he saw something new. He trusted himself. And that was worth more than he had expected. He had discovered that confidence wasn't something you waited for. Confidence was built by keeping promises to yourself. Arin crossed out day 100. Then he wrote, Day 101, continue. A few weeks later, Arin's little worker connection service began growing. It was still small, but businesses were beginning to call him. "Do you know a carpenter?" "Yes." "Can you find 2 people for tomorrow?" "I'll try."